Hi, and welcome back to Serie A podcast for the fans. And we're here after an incredible week of football. And, you can't ask for bigger matches than what we've had this week. It has been like one of the better rounds that anyone could hope for. I think it's answered some questions. But like always, I'm here with my co-host, Bruno. Bruno, what do you reckon?
Happy New Year, mate. Happy New Year. But yeah, look, it's been an interesting start of the year. And you said it answered quite a few questions, which I believe this round did. But I just think it asked a lot more questions. You know, with Lazio and Roma, answered the questions about Lazio, but it asked a lot of questions about Roma because that's two games in a row where I'd say they were quite fortunate with the draw against Inter. Either way that they deserved it, but they did come from behind. But then in a derby, the way they performed was just terrible. And then more issues behind the scenes with the Coppa Italia match with Spezia today. 2 red cards, and they made 6 substitutions. Right, so there's all types of issues. It would have been, if they won that game, it would have been the second forfeited game in a season. I don't know when the last time something like that's happened due to management stuff ups, but yeah, a lot to go through, a lot to cover. But as an Inter fan, and I'm sure with you as a Lazio fan, it really could not get much better.
Yeah, this this week is probably the best week of this podcast history and probably the best week ever. We Lazio absolutely dominated Roma. 85th minute was the first time Roma had a shot on target. It was clinical. It separated the boys from the men. It's been an interesting season for every team, I think. With COVID, some players have reacted differently to it. Some players have been absolutely fine. Some players haven't. We've seen last year when they come back that a lot of teams like Lazio suffered. Even Juventus suffered last season when they returned back from COVID. And this season's been one of those funny ones because you had Champions League continuously, and then Champions League game, and it was non-stop. So it's very hard to gauge form, but you kind of feel like you're kind of separating the boys from the men right now. And I think at the start of the year, we all sort of suspected that Roma had a really decent team on paper. However, it was decent. It wasn't great. It was probably top 6 team, and I think that they're really doing really well against the lesser teams, and Fonseca's a really good coach when it comes to that, where he can change his team around when he plays different teams. He'll change it constantly, which is really good. But the trouble was in this game that Lazio kind of outsmarted him because Roma had a high line. Lazari caught him out twice. And because they had the higher line, when they got caught, it was almost one-on-one. And then Roma, they pushed back to help. They left the gap in behind for a couple of the goals. And Lazio really, they really destroyed their tactics because Roma had the high line, and then Roma sort of adapted and pushed back a little. But then Lazio found a lot of space in between the midfield and the defence. So tactically, Fonseca had no answers. They alter their lineup so they could start whatever they want, but they generally they still they actually shift to the 3-5-2 a lot of the times as well. But at the end of the day, Chiro gets the crucial goals. Luis Alberto, unfortunately, this is like a purple run for him. He's been so good in the start of this year. He's been a disaster for the first half of the season, but this year, January on like the January month, he's been really good. But he's actually just gone under the knife. He's had his appendix taken out, and it's a big blow for Lazio. We have Pereira there, but I think if Lazio can maintain this form, Lazio is generally a top 4 contender. But I think Roma really proved that they aren't.
Yeah, look, I think leading into the start of the season, Roma were a very highly spoken about team with the sale of the club, management, and so forth. I do feel they've copped it pretty early on. Zaniolo got an injury, and I feel Fonseca would have built a lot of his team's principles around Zaniolo. He showed amazing potential last season when he wasn't injured, and again this season. But I just think, yeah, you're right. They've pulled off some half decent results. So, they got a draw against Milan, they got a draw against Juventus, they got a draw against Inter, but they absolutely got belted by Napoli. They absolutely got belted by Lazio. And in their last 3 games in all competitions, they've come out with 1 draw and 2 losses. They lost 4-2 to Spezia. They lost 3-0 to Lazio, and they drew 2-2 with Inter. And that's not the sign of a promising team. And leading into European competition and the chaos that's going to bring, because I do feel Fonseca and Roma have something to prove. Going into European competition, it's only going to get more difficult because being in Europa League, you're playing 2 games to every 1 Champions League game, and you're playing an extra 2 games to everyone else who isn't in any competition. So they've got a lot to prove, and there's a lot to be done there. With Lazio in the start of their season, I feel their results were they were excusable. I'm not saying they had the best results, and I'm not saying they had the worst results, but they were drawing and dropping points to teams they shouldn't have. When it came to, Juventus, they got the draw. When it came to Inter, they got the draw. But I find great excuse with the fact that they dominated their Champions League group. Now, people will question me using the word dominated, but the only time they had a half-strength team was in their first game against Borussia Dortmund, and they absolutely destroyed them. Every game after that, it was either COVID or injuries, and they got across the line. And at the end of the day, they're through to the round of 16, and Inter, Scudetto favourites, came last in the group. And you can tell where the priorities are. Lazio struggled in the league, prioritised Champions League, whereas Inter's done the complete opposite, and the results are showing themselves here. And but Lazio, the news of Inzaghi extending his contract until 2023, I believe. Is that correct?
Well, nothing's official just yet. They're coming out, and I believe it's going to be 2.5 million a season with bonuses with Champions League. I think the whole debate, like the whole process, has been delayed due to, I think Inzaghi wants longevity. So I'm not sure about the length of the contract, but this is what's been released. Nothing really.
Yeah, but the all intentions point towards an extension. But Lazio, I feel like this game here, although so late in the season, and we're talking second last game of the first half of the season, we're 18 games in, and this game here just defines them. And all season, and we talk regularly outside of the podcast, but all season, Lazio has been one great science experiment in my eyes. They've had young players like Akpro come into the squad and shine. And then you've got players like Mohamed Fares and Wesley Hoyt, and there's that other one which I am forgetting.
We're bringing Marici and Pereira as well.
Yes, and Pereira. And you know what? These players weren't trained for the Serie A, let alone Lazio, and they've been thrown in. And I feel you suffered at the beginning, but now it's starting to pay dividends. And you know what? I say you suffered at the beginning, but if you look at the overall table, Lazio is sitting in seventh, right? They're on 31 points. Third place is on 34 points, right? So between seventh and third, they are one game off virtually. Now you look at the teams in front of you. AC Milan got to play Atalanta, who is sitting in sixth. Juventus and Napoli still have to play, so that's third and fifth. So points are going to get taken. So for such a terrible season beginning, and I say it like that because we're used to last season's Lazio, they're actually up there, right? They've had the 5 losses, they've had the 4 draws, and they've had the 9 wins. But overall, I do feel this team, depending on their Champions League performance, and I'm saying depending because my prediction is they most probably will lose and get eliminated by Bayern Munich. But the way Bayern's been playing at the moment is something different. But my prediction is they won't be in the Champions League for too much longer. And when they return to the Serie A, it's going to be the Lazio show. And I do see Champions League football for this team. Whereas with Roma, this derby is the pinnacle of their season. This is the game that the fans, and if there were fans there on the pitch in the stadium on Saturday morning, our time, I feel there would have been riots from the internals. It's at the Curva Sud. The Roma's, I just feel it would have been complete disaster because this is the game as a Roma player. Doesn't matter any other results because if you win this game, you're forgiven. And they just look like they didn't want to play. And like the Inter game, their first goal was a very big deflected goal and quite fortunate. And then their second goal was terrible defending. But at the same time, Inter had a lot of chances they didn't take. And all it took was that one extra goal. And they would have lost that as well. I just feel they're not showing what we're used to as Serie A fans. The last 2 years, they've just dropped right off.
Yeah, they've got a lot of work to do. Yeah, obviously, when you're making a 6 substitute in a match, when you can only make 5, when you're fielding a player that's 24 and you're saying he's 23, it's not it's not very good considering they got a new owner. They had a fresh start at the start of the year. These couple mistakes with this is equals Lazio's biggest ever derby win. Like 3-0 is the biggest win Lazio's ever had over Roma. So this is big, and the whole Lazio team is celebrating on the side. So with COVID happening and not much to celebrate, I'm pretty sure one half of Rome is really, really suffering.
Yeah, look, I gotta give it to Roma, the new owners, fresh start, but the gap between season end and season start was so small, and teams like Milan and Inter, who had a team and didn't vary too much from the year's previous team, are doing well because they didn't really have that big transfer spend where they got all these players and they got to integrate them into the squad. But as well as that, Inter has been quite fortunate in the sense of injuries, and they only had that spell with a lot of positive COVID results. And the same goes for Milan. They've had a fair few injuries, but their key players, other than Zlatan, who has been on absolutely fire at the moment, they've got the same basis as what they had last season. Whereas you look at Roma, you look at Lazio, you look at Juventus, it's a completely different game for them, but they didn't have the preseason, which everyone's accustomed to. But it's a derby, and it's it's like the Juventus Torino derby. Torino's coming near last, and they still stepped it up better than what Roma did.
Yeah.
You know, and that's Torino. So I don't know. I don't know if the passion's there. I don't know. There's obviously something happening in the background. I don't know if Lazio have a rat inside the Rome camp, because these management mistakes are quite stupid, and they're immature and not needed. They lost 2 points. Well, they lost a point to Hellas Verona. I don't know what the repercussions of the sixth substitute will be for the Coppa game, if any. They may be penalised for next year's Coppa. They still lost, so I don't know. Something's got to give.
Yeah, well, I'm crying here for them. I've got a lot of sympathy for them. So yeah, it's a shame. It's a real shame. It's just a pity. But I think we should change on to the second name derby of the round. But what last year would have been the biggest game of the season, this year was a little bit different, because Juventus has been struggling, and I think that Inter were out there to prove a point that they can beat Juventus, and it was one of those games where anything could really happen. Like it was like, well, Juventus could dominate this game. Juventus could get a last minute penalty to equalise, and
Yeah.
I don't think anyone, even though Juventus haven't been sensational, I don't think anyone predicted Inter to dominate the game as they did. It was a big surprise. It was a poor Juventus display. They everything that they tried, Inter countered with, quite well. And Conte's been criticised for not changing formation, and clearly in the last few weeks he has, as I'm sure you'll get to. But Juventus, very bland. I'm not sure if that Coppa Italia round, they suffered a lot more than what Inter did, just with the lack of probably depth, because I don't think that Juventus have the depth this year. They rely on McKenzie there, and he's been out injured, and he hasn't been able to put them. When he plays, Juventus are a different team, but you can't have one or two players out and blame anything. And particularly this season, as we're going with COVID, every team, and you got to feel sorry for Parma and Spezia, because they've copped it worse than any other team, and Spezia are still pulling out results. So there's no excuse for injuries, no excuse for suspensions. Juventus are. It's up to you, Bruno. Were Juventus that bad, or were Inter that good?
I feel as an Inter fan, I gotta say Inter were that good, but as a spectator, like you touched on earlier, watching the game, Juventus tried so many things, but Inter were just that one notch better, and I put that down to Inter. I don't put that down to Juventus being bad. Now, there was a shot earlier on very early on in the game where the shot was taken. I don't remember who took it from Juventus, and it came off an Inter player, and Handanovic made the most awkward save I've seen. And it landed at the feet of Chiesa, who passed it to Ronaldo, and he tapped it in. But Chiesa was way offside. And in my mind, it's that deflection we saw last week can result in a goal. And this time, it was very awkward save, but it was a save. And I felt that this Juventus was relentless. And then moments later, Vidal scores his first Serie A goal in 6 years against the team he scored his last Serie A goal for. He didn't celebrate, but at the same time, it was the lead-up play which was the most impressive. Now, I've been quite critical of Inter all season in the sense of defense. They're constantly conceding. But also the attack. They don't seem... They can develop a great attack, but the final product and men in the box just doesn't seem to add up. And I believe Vidal, before his goal, managed to get 4 or 5 touches in the lead-up play before the cross came in, went over Lukaku, went over Martinez. Vidal headed it in and scored the goal. But if it went past Vidal, Ashley Young was right there to tap it in as well. And I touched on in an earlier video I did with Inter Worldwide in regards to Conte's tactics. So we've seen one side of the Conte coin since he's been at Inter, and that's the 3-5-2 formation. And when he was at Chelsea, he changed that 3-5-2 to a 3-4-3. And I've been waiting for this to happen at Inter. I feel it would have happened a lot earlier, but the Sampdoria fixture really caused it to accelerate. He had an amazing run of wins with Inter. I think it was 8 in a row prior to the Sampdoria loss. So, and the change itself has moved Barella not to a striker position, but I'd call it a RAM position, the right attacking mid. Where he's moved up the field and he's playing alongside Hakimi. And it doesn't look like much, but they form... So any basic coach would know to be more effective in your passes is to pass in the form of a triangle. And generally it was De Vrij to Hakimi to Barella, back to De Vrij, or Hakimi, Barella, Vidal, Hakimi, Barella, Vidal. And Barella and Vidal will hug the right side of the wing. But when you've got Martinez and Lukaku in the box, you really are limited to who can defend Barella and Hakimi. And then you're limited more to which one am I going to defend. And that's where the attack has really opened up for Inter recently, and it was exploited with the first goal. Barella had Hakimi outside of him, but I'm going to take it. The defender was pushing towards Hakimi, was confused, and put the cross in. But then the second goal, which Barella did score, it was... I feel it wasn't because Juventus were terribly defending, but I do feel it was because Juventus were very advanced. They'd come out of that, they've gone into halftime down 1-0. The Curva Nord, Inter's Curva Nord, were setting off fireworks galore, which was amazing, knowing that the atmosphere was still there and it was causing irritation on the pitch. But they've gone into the halftime down 1-0, and I feel Beardle was like, well, we need to get this goal back. And he's pushed most of his defense up, midfield up, and Bastoni, Handanovic got a goal kick inside. Obviously, he got the goal kick inside his half, but passed it to Bastoni, and the Juventus players were so pressing that Bastoni put a beautiful ball over the top, and Barella was there and ran it through and got the goal. And normally that's a Lukaku Martinez situation, but Martinez was just inside the Inter half, deeper in the Inter half, and they just dismissed Barella as an attacking issue because you've got Lukaku and Martinez.
It was a clear striker's goal where when you see the goal, it was one touch finish. It was a clear striker's goal, and this is the whole thing where if you have a look at Inter's touches, they start from the back left, and Martinez and Lukaku are deliberately on the left-hand side to draw the defense that way, and then they outnumber them on the right-hand side with Hakimi and Barella. And because Barella is a ram, I guess now, he has the quality to lay off a ball, and that's why Hakimi has been scoring often because of the quality ball coming through. Because Barella would draw the man and clean through for Hakimi. But I thought that was the clear indication that Barella is very much a multitasker in that Inter team, where when you look at the team, you don't see a CDM and a CM, in the Inter squad. So what they're doing is Vidal and Brozovic, they're playing both positions. They're playing CDM and they're playing the CM. And Barella is actually a third striker, but it's very confusing for the other teams because he's hanging a little bit back, waiting for Martinez and Lukaku to draw the defenders wide. So when a ball goes over the top, at the best case scenario, he's one-on-one with the goalkeeper. And that looked like a clear striker's sort of ball and a clear striker finish. And it's quite cagey from Conte because once again, you have a look at the way they're playing. They're coming out through Bastoni and Young, and they're quickly switching the ball to the right-hand side, which is clean space, and Hakimi would have to be one of the quickest players in the league, and it's really, really smart tactics.
Yeah, look, you definitely got to give credit there. And you know what? I see a lot of Juventus fans and, other fans, Milan fans and other fans saying, well, you're playing this year's Juventus. You're not playing last year's Juventus. But this year's Juventus is the same Juventus who handed Milan their first loss 2 weeks ago, right? And yes, a lot can change. But at the same time, Inter, as an Inter fan, was like, well, only one team's beaten AC Milan all season, and it's this team we're facing, who are the defending 9-time champions. Right? They didn't just win it last year. They've won it for the last 9 years. So there's got to be something in that, and they've got the Ballon d'Or winner in Cristiano Ronaldo. They've excelled in the Champions League. They won their group with Barcelona in their group. So all signs are pointing to that. This isn't a Juventus squad to be reckoned with. But I also feel this win isn't about beating an informed Juventus. This win is about Inter taking the monkey off their shoulder where they can't beat the big teams. And Conte can't beat the big teams. And whether you like it or not, Juventus, I still have them Scudetto winners. And this game here may have not changed my mind totally, but I still feel Inter have beaten a great team who may not have been playing well, but they still on paper are a fantastic team. And this monkey on the shoulder isn't just Conte's monkey where, you're going into this game carrying the pressure of, the pressure of everything, because pressure is everything in Serie A. And you know what? There is no pressure on AC Milan, and they're playing extremely well. Inter have the pressure of, well, AC Milan's playing Juventus. This is our chance to take on take the lead in the table. Oh, we'll lose to Sampdoria, right? So pressure is everything, and the pressure on Inter and Conte this fixture was extremely high. But the fact that they came through and performed the way they did, it wasn't a scrappy 2-0, and it wasn't, the traditional Inter 2 set pieces where we've gotten 2 goals from. These were 2 chances created in open play, and position for position, Inter just dominated. And that I feel that weight's been lifted off their shoulders now. I feel that they can go on. Now it's up to Inter. Now, if Milan go on and win every single game from now, and even if they lose the Inter-Milan game, they could still win the Scudetto, right? Because that's how you can interpret it this season, that there's such a dominant team. But if Milan start dropping points and Inter capitalize, it's going to be a very hard time catching Inter. who only have Serie A obligations, where everyone in the top 7 are still in Europe.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to see now who prioritizes, because we already seen Sassuolo pretty much just give away the Coppa because they knew they were playing Juventus in the next round, so they just gave it to Spal. Obviously they got Berardi out, Sassuolo. They got what's the other big name out? They got another big name out as well. Sassuolo. Yeah, yeah. So they got a couple big names out. So they just whatever, you can have it. It's too many games for us. So they did the smart thing, I think. But a lot of games with little squad, I think that this is the problem that Juventus are having right now, and I think this is why Juventus struggled against Inter, is because I think Juventus's top team on paper would give Inter a good challenge. You know, with Delit, with McKenzie, I think that their team would give Inter a run for the money. I don't think it would have been 2-0. But it doesn't matter, because every season, every team has their problems. You know, so it's not like Lazio haven't been without Chiro in games. Every team has their problems. And it's a long season, and you need to know how to deal with it. You need to have a squad. And this is why Juventus have been so dominant over the years, is because they had a squad. And they really don't have that now. Their midfield is good when they're good, and it is poor when they're poor. Their defense is always strong. I feel Chiellini's best days are behind him, and it's a mismatch. Delit, different story, one of the best defenders in the world. They've got quality for days up front with they've got options with it's just a joke with Dybala, Ronaldo, Morata, Chiesa, it doesn't stop. So they got but they got the players up front, and they got a decent back line. But the problem is Serie A is all about midfield. It's all about midfield.
Well, that's where Pirlo comes into it. And when you appoint a manager, not just an inexperienced manager, because I feel like Pirlo's been managing a long time. Even when he was in the Italian national squad, on that pitch, he was the manager. He would dictate how play went. And a beautiful example was Italy-England in the 2014 World Cup, I believe. In terrible conditions in the humidity, he dictated how the game went, even though he wasn't technically the coach. Now, you move forward, you've had, Conte as a successful manager at Juventus. You've had Allegri. I was going to say Agnelli, but that's the president. Allegri as a successful manager at Juventus. And you've had Sarri, who got sacked in first place as a successful manager at Juventus. But the era of Conte, Allegri, and Sarri was a team like 2009 Barcelona, where I could have been their manager and they still would have played extremely well. But I feel bringing Pirlo into the squad is giving them the chance to rebuild. But at the same time, it's also changed the way they play their game. Because Pirlo, experienced or not, is going to bring a completely different approach and a completely different point of view on how the game should be played. And I think Pirlo was playing under Conte, right? So that's how fresh out of school this kid is, right? And I call him a kid because he's a kid in the world of coaches, right? But that's how fresh he is, right? Juventus haven't lost a title since he was there playing under the manager who just beat him. So that was a mouthful. So I feel this is Juventus's chance to rebuild, but I also feel they've picked their priorities. They've picked their priorities and they've picked them early on in the season. And you don't win the group the way you did against Barcelona without picking your priorities. Now, you've got the Champions League king in your team, and that's Cristiano Ronaldo. You've got the clutch king in your team in Morata, right? You've got fantastic midfield players, and I'm scared to see how Arthur will go if he can get going. But you've got a player like Dybala who spends most of his time on the bench. You know, I can see I could see Juventus progressing well, but I also see them in a rebuilding stage, which not just rebuilding in the sense of players, but also rebuilding in their style of play.
Yeah, they're definitely. I think that they've bought really well. They've probably been the best team in the transfer market, to be honest. They've bought what they wanted. They've done really, really well. I think Chiesa has grown at Juventus. He's become a better player, which is good for the national team. But more than that, I really think that Pirlo's style through the midfield is actually showing, but it shows when they're full strength. I think Juventus are full strength. They're growing and growing and growing. And you've seen from the start of the year, they've been growing slowly, slowly. And I think a Juventus that has a week off at full strength, so it's one game a week, I think Juventus probably win the title, because they've been fairly consistent. Their defense has been fairly strong. But I just think that they don't have the squad depth more than anything, because they had a lot of rubbish players at that team that they had to get rid of.
They've got so many injuries at the moment as well. Cuadrado, Alexandro, the list, the Dybala, McKinney. Pardon?
I don't think Demiral wasn't playing. Was he playing against Inter?
I don't remember. I was too busy celebrating. But they've got and Alexandro, Cuadrado, Dybala. They're players, even if they're not starters, that changed the game for Juventus, and that's why Juventus has been so deadly all these years. They've got game changers that don't even start, let alone that the team that they field to start their matches. You've elected. They elected to. It's phenomenal, to be honest. It's phenomenal. But I think that's all I have to say, because I feel like I'll be jinxing Inter's chances the more I talk about it. But overall, I feel both derby fixtures, the Roma, the derby of the capital, as well as the unofficial derby d'Italia, the results went the way the game should have went. There was no dodgy. The refereeing in the Inter game was pretty decent, and didn't impact the game too much. Not sure how the referee in the Lazio game was, but overall, I feel the results were quite fair.
Well, that's there was a bit of a dodgy decision with the second goal, with Lazio going down. TV didn't really show the replay. There was questions whether his hand hit the ball, but Lazio has actually come out and said that he thought he was clipped in the box. That's why he went down in the first place. So it would have been a penalty regardless, and he didn't think that the ball hit his hand. So there was a few questions over that.
I would have come out and said, it hit my hand and I don't care, especially when it's against Roma.
Yeah, I 100%. But yeah, that was a little bit of controversy. Other than that, Osato is Osato. He's you got to love his expressions when someone takes a dive, and it's quite funny. And you need these characters in the game. He's he's a referee that gets 75% of dives right, I think, or soft challenges right. So that 25% that he gets wrong, you're sort of like, oh well, at least he gets, he's consistent and he's fair and he's playing it as he sees it. So I don't particularly have a problem with it. VAR is there, so it did go to VAR. VAR didn't see anything in that particular challenge, but all in all, we are the first team in Rome, and we really are the only team in Rome, mate. The sky's blue in Rome, and it will be for a long time to come.
Hey, look, the sky's blue in Milan at the moment as well, and you know what? It's going. I said this in one of our first podcasts. It takes 4 or 5 games for me to predict what's happening. It's 18 games in, and I've still got no clue. And you know what? I just feel it's going to be an amazing second half of the season. And what's better is it doesn't just stop there. The Euros start, and it's just like we're in heaven. We're in heaven. And I just feel in the world we're living in at the moment, this is something the world needs. And we're embracing it. I'm sure. I know you are. I know I am. But it's going to be a very, very interesting second leg. 100%.
All right. Well, next week we'll see who will be winter champions. Will it be shared? Will there be a sole winner? It's gonna be. I'm pretty sure it's pretty much only like one team that has been winter champions hasn't won. Every other team has won over the last 15, 17 years. So
yeah, Napoli were the last team to be winter champions, and Juventus came back and won.
Yeah, so it's gonna be insane. This is a huge round. We'll be back next week with analysis of every game. So thanks, guys.
See you then. Ciao.
Ciao.